it's Nell, and I'm continuing on with the Growing Succulents Indoors series, and this one is all about pruning, trailing, or hanging succulents, so stick around for that. So as usual, there is a blog post to go along with this video. There will be pictures and more details in that. So if you're unclear about something here, head on over to the post. It's in the first couple lines of the description box and also on our website, JoyUsGarden.com. And even though I'm pruning these outdoors, it's because the light is much better out there. You would prune indoor succulents exactly the same way as you do outdoor ones. So everything I'm doing here applies to indoors, even though I'm outdoors. So the best time to prune succulents, indoors or outdoors for that matter, is spring, summer, into early fall, especially if you're in a warmer climate like mine. I'm in Tucson, so I can easily prune into early fall. And why I do the pruning is because they get too long, they get too spindly. Here, especially in the heat, they get stressed, so I have to thin them out. This is string of bananas. This is where it was pruned last season, and it's put out this growth here, so it's also made it heavy too. And if you're in someplace like coastal California, which is ideal for fleshy succulents, it's okay, but here I just like to keep them on the shorter side. It also rejuvenates them at the top too, and it gets them to fill out and fill in and put out lots of nice new growth at the top. And of course also to propagate, and as I said, to control the growth. How you make a cut is just straight across. That's it. These stems are fairly thin on most of the trailing, succulents. So I just take a cutting close to a stem. So if I was going to do this, I'd cut right there, and I just do a cut straight across. And I like to use these floral nips. They're in my Amazon store. You can see them to cut these thinner stem ones. If there's anything that has a thicker stem, I use these. And that is about it. Just make sure that your pruners are clean and sharp. I have a video on how to clean and sharpen pruners, which I will leave below, and also in the blog post. How long of a cutting just depends. Sometimes I take a really short cutting if I'm just trying to control the length a little bit. Sometimes if I'm going to thin out, I will actually take a longer cutting. So it just depends on the purpose of what you're doing. Is like for propagation purposes, I usually don't take a cutting longer than 12 inches. Otherwise, if I'm just doing a nip here and there, any length is just fine. And if you're thinning out, you can just go ahead and take out a whole stem. Okay, so now we're going to spring into action and head over to the fishhook senecio, and I'm going to start there. Okay, so here's the fishhook senecio, and it's getting rather long, and you see this new growth up here? By pruning it, it'll encourage more of this growth here. So I'm just going to start in on it. I start on the larger ones. There's some that have been pruned over and over again, and you can see how so that's what happens where you prune it. There'll be a new trail coming out there. So it just gets really full in here. So I'm just going to go around and prune off. I'm going to take off some whole stems too, just to thin it out a little bit, because with those dense ones, it gets these that have all this, coming off them. There's growth, coming off of there and there. Okay, so this one is really, really long. The others aren't, so I'm just going to cut right there all the way back to the stem, and I'll probably take off this one here. I will take off this one because it's kind of thin there. So then what I'm left with is that. And then you just go all the way around. It's sort of like you have to look at them and see how they are. Here's one that's really long here. So I'm going to cut this one all the way back right there. And this is about the length I want it at this summer because it gets so hot here, you know, in the sun. You just can't escape the sun in Tucson. This is kind of funky to me, so I'm going to take it off right there. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go around, oh, this is scrawny. I'm going to go around the plant, and I'm just going to do that to the whole plant, just looking at each stem. Oh, and here's, for instance, here's a dead stem. So I would, of course, take out that. And then I will show you how it looks when I'm all done. Brielle, who's behind the camera, just asked me, how do I know where to prune? And it's just sort of an instinct thing. Like, this looks sort of strange to me, so I'm going to cut off this here. And then I'm left with that. And I can always go back and take off more. It's really hard to make a bad cut because this plant grows so fast. It's not like you're working with a priceless Japanese, you know, maple that grows really slow. This one grows fast. But look at this. It's just, this was pruned here and it put out all this new growth here. This is probably from last year. So what I'm going to do is cut off 2 of them and then see how I like that one, and that's okay for now. So you just sort of go through and cut. It's probably like people who cut hair. You have to kind of start to do it and see how it is and how crazy it is. Here's another dead one here, but this plant was so thick it was hard to even see the dead stems in here. Oh man. It's also been a very windy spring, so these plants have been kind of whipped around. This is part of like 4 stems here. You just don't know. See, this is coming off of this one stem here. So it gets really heavy too. So I'm going to start by taking off this one here. And then I'm going to take off another one. I'll take off this one here. And you go as close to the mother stem as possible. And that's that. And that has really thinned out that. So it's just a matter of sort of taking it apart and figuring out what you want to do. And this is what I do like once a year, this big pruning. So it's not like I do this every month or anything. So this is a crazy one. You get these insane-y ones. So I'm going to cut here. I'm going to cut this one here because I don't want them both going off, and I'm going to cut this one here too because there's a lot more coming at the top. So in Santa Barbara, where I used to live, is a beautiful climate for succulents, and I used to let this one get all the way down to the ground. It was really, really long, but that's prime climate for growing fleshy succulents. So here it's a struggle. And I don't cut them all at exactly the same length. I kind of stagger it a little bit so that they're not all like, and like, I don't like this because this is sticking straight out here. So I'm going to cut that there. So I finished pruning this plant. You can see it's quite a bit shorter. Not too much thinner. It doesn't look too much thinner, but it really is. Here's the view over here. Lots of bright sunshine in the back there. And lots of that nice growth coming out there. And now we're going to go for the string of dolphins. This is a relatively new plant. It's just been in a little while, but it's getting long. So I'm going to go up and to take this here. So there's not much to do in this one. It's the same thing. You just kind of go through and thin it out, you know, take it up. I want it to fill in at the top. I'm going to go down there on that one. I'm going to take off this side one because it's going really sideways, and this one right about here, and then this one right here. Okay, now we're on to string of bananas. And this has some dead ones. Over the weekend, I'm going to get on a ladder and I'm going to look and see if there's any dead ones up at the top. I'm just trying to get this here, but I've just taken out a few that aren't doing all that well. And I'm going to take out this here because it's a big blob. You know, that's what happens, you know, when you prune and prune, it becomes really, really thick. This one doesn't get quite as long as the fish hooks, but it still gets long, so. And this, even though they're growing outdoors, this is a great house plant. It does really well indoors too. This one looks as though it's not doing all that well. And that's another reason why I want to do this, to get those stems out that are not too healthy. And this is just to give you an idea of the amount of cuttings. It's not full. It's only about 2 inches or so on the top is what I took off of here. But these are all pretty dried because they were so long. So they are going to the great compost pile in the sky. And here is a cutting that I just wanted to show you. They get really leggy at the top here. The weight is pulling them down and it's so dry. So they really needed a haircut. So I hope you have found this video about pruning trailing succulents to be helpful. I have a lot more videos coming your way, so stay tuned for those. I thank you for all your likes and your subscribes. I really appreciate them. Now let's get into our indoor succulent gardens and make our worlds a more beautiful place. I thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you in the next video. Bye for now.